Now, in the platform, recently it appears the entire world has set its eyes on the African continent. And it's okay to say Africa's demographics is favorable too. Standards of governance are improving. We have opportunities for large-scale infrastructure investment found nowhere else in the world. By deepening regional and continental integration, the bright future reflected in the Africa Rising narrative has a better chance of becoming a reality within our lifetimes. Focusing on implementing our respective transformational national agendas based on the aspirations of our citizens will ensure that we have healthy parts working together for more productive partnerships in Africa. So as Africa commemorates Africa Day 2014 on turning 51 years, we continue to face challenges, among them famine and drought, spate of terror, civil wars, tribal conflicts, dying from preventable diseases. Amid it all, Africans from all walks of life have continued to show resilience for a better rising continent.
In this year, we now look at what the future of Pan-Africanism is. We will be having a big event at the KICC for ALD, and it's to look at where Pan-Africanism has come from and what the future should be. Where are we today, and how can Pan-Africanism be realized? We have realized lots of problems in unifying Africa from the offset in 1963 when it was formed. We must look at what has been our problems and how do we move forward, as much as we know that it's inevitable that Africa unites to free herself.
Well, we will now cross over to Uganda, where Nicholas Opio, the Secretary General of Law Society of Uganda, is standing by. Good afternoon, Nicholas.
Good afternoon to you. But I think before you start, let me just correct you. My time as Secretary just ended, so I'm no longer the Secretary of the Law Society here.
Okay. So what is your current title?
Well, I'm now leading a civil rights group here called Chapter 4 Uganda, the team leader. It's a civil rights movement dedicated to the defense of civil liberties in our country.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on Africa Speaks. Now, Nicholas, what is your evaluation of Africa in dealing with violations of basic human rights?
I think the African continent is still locked up in a conceptual debate about what exactly human rights. All throughout the continent, the argument about African values versus fundamental human rights as espoused in the Universal Declaration of 1948 is a debate that's alive, and that conceptual problem has in many ways led to a forgotten human rights situation emerging across the African continent. From Uganda to Somalia to Nigeria to Tunisia, African people are still grappling with massive violations to human rights, but more particularly with poverty and ignorance as the biggest driver of this problem. So, I mean, if you look at it from the angle of terrorism, the angle of whatever it is, the major driver of this is inequality and poverty and ignorance across the African continent. But there is also, I think, in my view, a ray of hope that the African people themselves have begun to realize the importance of demanding for their rights as opposed to waiting for them to be handed out to them. So from Uganda to across the world, the African people are demanding for their rights and holding leaders to account. But the problem of abuse of human rights still persists and presents a great danger to our continent.
What kind of future do you think that we as Africans deserve?
Look, I think the African people must deal with the question of equality, a question of poverty. We must deal with those questions. If we don't deal with those questions, the fundamental problem that bedevils our continent will continue to be amongst us here. We must deal with the question of poverty. A poverty-free and knowledgeable African continent will be able to defend African values, will be able to defend human rights. In the absence of equality, in the absence of people being enriched, there will still be this problem. So I envisage a continent where there is equality for all, equal access to resources, equal access to opportunities, but also a continent in which the African people are well informed about their basic rights and are able to demand them from their leaders. Secondly, I also still envisage an African continent where there's no war, because it does appear there's a second spate of wars across the African continent, from Mali, Somalia, Nigeria, Uganda, Congo. We still see insurgencies, and these are basic drivers of abuse of human rights. So I see an African continent free of conflicts, more democratic and more accommodative of its people.
Well, thank you very much, Nicholas Opio there, joining us via Skype from Uganda. Now, let's take a look at some of your responses under the hashtag #AfricaForward. Obangmetha, who was supposed to join us this afternoon, says that Africa that has genuine accountability that goes beyond deceptive rhetoric to actual practice. At Alpha_B_O, he says that a peaceful Africa that investors have no fear over security, a united Africa. We move on to at Mushiri Njenga, and he tells us that Africa with accountable and transparent governance. Also, we joined at Lee_5, where she says Africa where there's equality, good moral values, a peaceful place where there's freedom of movement, speech, and religion. And we won't stop there. We have _Susan_Nava, who says the vision of Africa's future includes creating jobs, improving business climate, and enhancing the governance. Now, in 1978, Jamaican reggae artist Hugh Mundell had a hit single called Africa Must Be Free by 1983, with its chorus saying, I think it's time for us to live a better life. Yeah, freedom is what we want in Africa. In the freedom he had in mind included a united Africa, free of war. He never saw it. So ironically, Mundell was shot and killed in 1983 at the age of 21. Decades on, there's still no sign of his high hopes coming true. Yet, although a lot has been done, analysts say that the lack of real progress towards a united Africa, the huge economic injection from average gross domestic products growth rates of 5% and 6% over the past few years, which some label Africa Rising, is not being used effectively to integrate the continent. And just before we wind up, in addition, African leaders are accused of being too focused on staying in power in their own countries to forge strong continental partnerships. Well, thank you very much for watching Africa Speaks. That's all the time we had for you this afternoon. My name is Najma Ismail, and Joy Doreen Bira will be here with you next week. Thank you.